book I subsequently did, or the book I did 2 books later, studied the American death penalty. And the reason I studied the American death penalty wasn't that I thought I had something new to say about the morality of capital punishment. I mean, it seemed like that had been a debate people had been having for 2 centuries. There was nothing new to say. What I wanted to undertake in that book was a sociological question. Why is it that at a time when most of the developed world, all of the Western world, had abandoned capital punishment, why was it that America, the federal government, and indeed 30 of the states still retained it? Why did they retain it in a peculiar form that didn't seem very efficient or very speedy or very satisfactory? And why did it exist in some parts of the country, but not others? In other words, what I tried to do was to ask a question about this punishment, which was not a question about does it work to contain crime, and wasn't even a question about is it moral or not moral. It was a question about what could explain this social institution, which seems so peculiar, so exceptional, so distinctive, and also, from the point of view of criminal justice or crime control, so irrational. So I tried to make capital punishment in America a sociological question. How to explain it, how to explain its retention, how to explain its form, how to explain its function. And by the way, and this is one of the things that the Marxists and Durkheim and Foucault, all of them do this in different ways, usually indirectly. I tried to use sociological analysis to change our normative thinking. In other words, I presented a kind of, I think, neutral, detached account of how this actually operates. But having presented this account of how it operates, it seemed to me it changed the grounding for any normative argument. In other words, I think people could be asked, do you support the death penalty for murder or not? And that's an abstract question. And, people could say yes. Immanuel Kant said yes. He thought it was the right thing to do. Other people said no. They thought it was an appalling, immoral thing to do. But it's an open question. I think if you say, look at how the death penalty is operationalized and exercised in the USA according to US law, look at the fact that, of 14 or 18,000 homicides, only 40 or 50 of them will attract the death penalty. Look at the fact that the people who attract the death penalty are not the worst murderers, but typically Black offenders who've victimized white victims and who have no decent legal defense. I mean, they're not provided with a decent legal attorney. Look at the fact that they wait on average 15 to 20 years before they're put to death. And look at the way that we put them to death, namely in this kind of embarrassed, evasive, pretend euthanasia called the lethal injection. Do you support that? And particularly if you remember, it costs millions of dollars for each one of these death penalties, most of which are overturned on appeal 10 or 15 years. That's a very different question. It shapes the normative argument, I think, much more pointedly and effectively than the abstract, do you support the capital punishment or not question. So to that extent, one's doing sociology in an empirical mode, but at the same time having a bearing upon normative and moral arguments. And I think that that's really what sociology always does, sometimes explicitly and directly, sometimes indirectly in the way I've just described.